The Africa CEO Forum came to a close early in the week, but on the sidelines of that event, CGTN's Uche Okoronkwo caught up with the International Finance Corporation's Vice President in charge of portfolio management. They discussed a range of issues, including how to reinvent African economies.
Now, we're discussing reinventing Africa's business model here at the Africa CEO Forum. So what is your take on that idea? And certainly, how is it impacting IFC's plan going forward? Are you rethinking your financing strategy on the continent?
Today, Africa is confronted with this reality that government can no longer get involved in everything and anything, and that they need to refocus their attention on areas that are really more important to creating the conditions of private sector activities. So this means, in a way, creating markets by creating the conditions, creating transparency, defining the rules of the game, so that people know what to expect and have certain predictability when they invest their money long term. So I see really the role of the state to be more focused on those areas and developing certainly, investing heavily into education to ensure that Africans will be well equipped to be serving the needs of companies and development going forward. As for the private sector, I think if the government withdraws from certain areas where arguably they don't really have such a big role, like does it make sense for a government to be financing a port, an airport, and certainly leave those areas for the private sector, then they can refocus on other areas. And there is obviously an overlap where you would have public-private partnerships, where it's neither only the private sector or the public sector that can really bring the solution, but it has to be a joint effort to do so.
But what is your sense of the investment climate right now in Africa? And certainly, as you maintain your strategy going forward, what are the priorities? You talked about infrastructure. Give us a sense of what are some of the sectors we'll see you further going into going forward.
If you read the Doing Business report, which is, you may not be familiar with it, it is a World Bank Group report that basically ranks every country in the world on 10 criteria of doing the ease of doing business, and you will find that African countries are in the bottom third, essentially most of them. So these are areas where we really think we can make a difference. So that is in terms of the advisory and ensuring that government are putting in place the right policies to support the private sector. That is going to be creating the jobs of the future. I think currently some estimations are that in the next 40 years, Africa has to create 700 million jobs just to keep afloat, meaning with new entrants in the market. Right. So from our perspective, infrastructure is extremely important. Financial inclusion is one thing, and that's where disruptive technologies, digital finance come into play to really help reduce the cost of doing business, the cost of servicing people in rural areas, in remote areas, and giving them access to finance. So that's one area. We also focus on the agri sector, which is absolutely fundamental for Africa, trying to develop with larger companies the supply chain, all along the supply chain, from the farming up to providing market access to farmers.